The ship landed on Platform 7 of the Galactic Academy of Unified Species. Myra Vasquez stood at the window and watched the massive station grow larger and larger until it filled her entire view. She was 16 years old. She was the first human to ever attend this school. And she was very, very far from home. Earth was 3 months of travel behind her. 3 months of cold sleep, bad dreams, and waking up alone in a metal box, hurtling through the darkness between stars. Her parents had cried when she left. Her little brother had given her a small potted plant, a succulent he had grown himself. She named it Gerald. It was the only piece of home she had brought with her. The academy was beautiful in a strange way. The walls were made of something that looked like crystal, but felt warm when she touched it. The floors glowed with soft light that changed color as she walked. Everything was curved and smooth, designed for species that had never known sharp edges or hard corners. Mira felt like a stone in a river of silk-dot students filled the hallways, and none of them looked like her. They were tall beings with skin like silver water, short creatures covered in soft fur, things with too many eyes, too many legs, too many parts that she could not name. They all moved out of her way as she walked. They pressed themselves against the walls. They stopped talking when she passed. Mira had been told to expect this. Humans had only been traveling between stars for 100 years. That was nothing in galactic terms. Most species had been out here for thousands of years, some for millions. To them, humans were new. Humans were unknown. Humans were dangerous. Earth had a special name in galactic records. It was called a Deathworld, Category 7. This meant it was one of the most dangerous planets in the known galaxy where intelligent life had evolved. The gravity was crushing. The atmosphere was filled with a gas that most species considered poison. The weather could kill. The plants could kill. The animals could definitely kill. And somehow, humans had not only survived there, but had become the dominant species. This made other species nervous. Myra found her dormitory pod on the far edge of the student living section. It was small, barely big enough for a bed and a desk. The walls were plain gray, not the pretty crystal of the main halls. There was no window. She understood the message clearly. She was here, but she was not welcome. She set Gerald on the desk and began unpacking her bag. She had brought very little. Some clothes, a paper book, old and worn, that her grandmother had given her, a photograph of her family standing in front of their house, the sun setting behind them, everyone smiling. She looked at that photograph for a long time. There was a sound outside her door, footsteps, whispers. She could hear voices speaking in the common galactic language, the one she had spent 2 years learning before coming here. Is that where it sleeps? I heard they eat raw meat. My father says they are barely civilized. Animals pretending to be people. Myra closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She had promised her parents she would not cause trouble. She had promised herself she would prove that humans deserved to be here. She would be patient. She would be kind. She would show them that humans were not the monsters they believed. The footsteps moved away. The whispers faded. Mira finished unpacking in silence. The next morning, she attended her first class. It was called Introduction to Galactic History, and it was held in a room that could seat 500 students. Mira sat in the back corner, as far from everyone as she could get. The professor was a Valkyrie, a species that looked like a walking tree with too many branches. Its voice was like wind through leaves. Today we will discuss the formation of the Galactic Council, the professor said. But first, I must address a new presence among us. Every eye in the room turned to look at Mira. Some of those eyes were on stalks. Some glowed in the dim light. Some had no pupils at all. Mira felt her heart beat faster, but she kept her face calm. We have a human student joining us this year, the professor continued. This is unusual. Humans are new to the galactic community. They come from a world that most of you would not survive for even one day. Their presence here is an experiment." Myra said nothing. She did not move. "Let us hope the experiment is successful," the professor said, and turned back to the lesson. The day went on. More classes, more staring, more whispers that stopped when she came close. Mira ate lunch alone in a corner of the dining hall. The food was strange, cubes of something that tasted like nothing and felt like jelly. She missed her mother's cooking. She missed the smell of bread baking. She missed the sound of her brother laughing. But she was here for a reason. The Galactic Council had finally agreed to allow one human student to attend the academy. If she did well, more would follow. If she failed, if she proved all their fears right, it might be another 100 years before humans got another chance. That night, she sat on her small bed and looked at Gerald. The little plant sat on her desk, its thick green leaves glowing slightly in the dim light. It was tough, that plant. It came from a harsh place, just like her. It did not need much water. It did not need perfect conditions. It just needed to survive. "We can do this," she said to Gerald. "We just have to be patient. We just have to show them who we really are." Gerald did not answer. He was a plant. But somehow, Myra felt a little less alone. Outside her door, the station hummed with the sounds of 1,000 different species living their lives. Somewhere out there, in the cold halls of the academy, someone was already making plans for the human girl. Someone had already decided that she did not belong. Someone was already thinking about how to make her leave. Myra did not know this yet. She would learn soon enough. For now, she turned off her light, pulled her thin blanket over her shoulders, and dreamed of blue skies, green grass, and a home that was very far away. Vethra Kelmoris had never been told no. Not once in her entire life. She was the daughter of High Arbiter Kelmoris, one of the 12 most powerful beings in the entire galaxy. Her family controlled trade routes that stretched across 1,000 star systems. They owned moons. They shaped laws. When Vethra wanted something, she got it. When she was angry, people suffered. She was very angry about the human. Vethra was Sithari, and the Sithari were considered the most beautiful species in the known galaxy. They were tall and thin, with skin like polished pearl and eyes like liquid gold. Their bones were light, almost hollow like birds. Their world was a paradise, a gentle place of soft rains and warm winds where nothing hurt and nothing died before its time. They had never needed to be strong. They had learned to be clever instead. For 10,000 years, the Sithari had ruled through politics, through money, through careful manipulation. They did not fight wars. They made others fight wars for them. They did not work. They made others work for them. And they did not accept that any species could be their equal, especially not a species that had crawled out of some Deathworld only 100 years ago. Vethra sat in her private room, which was the largest in the student section, and looked at images of the human on her screen. Small, brown skin, dark hair, nothing special to look at, nothing impressive. Just a little creature from a planet full of poison and monsters. "It does not belong here," Vethra said to her friends. She had many friends. Some of them were real friends. Most of them were just afraid of her family. "No," agreed Thesix, a small furry being whose family owed the Kelmoris trade empire a very large debt. "It does not. We should make it understand this," Vethra said. "We should help it learn its place." The others nodded. They always nodded. It was 3 days before Vethra made her first move. She found Myra in the dining hall, sitting alone as always, eating those tasteless food cubes as if they were the finest meal. Vethra walked up behind her with 5 of her followers. She reached down and knocked the tray from Myra's hands. The cubes scattered across the floor. The sound was loud in the quiet hall. Everyone turned to look. Myra looked up at Vethra. Her eyes were dark brown, like earth soil. They showed no fear. "Pick them up," Vethra said. Myra looked at the cubes on the floor. Then she looked back at Vethra. "No," she said. The word hung in the air. Vethra felt heat rise in her chest. No one said no to her. "No one. I said pick them up, human. And then kneel and apologize for making me look at you." Myra stood up slowly. She was shorter than Vethra, but there was something in the way she moved that made Desik step backward. It was small. It was quick. It was the movement of something that was used to reacting fast or dying. "I will pick up the food," Myra said quietly, "because it is wrong to waste food. But I will not kneel to you." She bent down and began gathering the cubes. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was calm. Vethra watched her with growing hatred. "You think you are brave," Vethra said. "You think because you come from a Deathworld, you are strong. But strength means nothing here. This is not your savage planet. Here, power comes from family, from history, from knowing your place. And your place is beneath me." Myra finished picking up the food. She stood up and looked at Vethra with those dark eyes. "I do not want to be your enemy," Myra said. "I just want to learn and go home." Vethra laughed. It was a beautiful sound, like bells ringing, but there was no warmth in it. "You do not get to decide that, human. I decide, and I have decided that you will never feel welcome here. You will never have peace. You will leave this place broken, and you will tell your people that they do not belong among the stars." She turned and walked away, her followers trailing behind her like shadows. Myra stood alone in the middle of the dining hall. Around her, hundreds of students pretended they had not seen anything. They looked at their food. They looked at the walls. They looked anywhere except at her dot. This was how it worked at the academy. The strong ruled. The weak suffered. And no one helped. Over the next week, things got worse. Mira would find her assignments deleted from her computer. Her clothes would go missing from the cleaning stations. Strange messages appeared on her door, words and languages she did not know but could guess the meaning of. "Go home. You do not belong." Monster. She reported none of it. Who would she report it to? The professors looked through her like she was made of glass. The headmaster, a Velkari named Zinthus, had made it clear at her arrival that she was here against his wishes. She had no allies, no friends, no one who would stand beside her, and every night she would sit in her tiny room and look at Gerald the plant and remind herself why she was here. For humanity, for the future, for the chance that someday other humans would walk these halls and not be alone. She did not know how much longer she could last, but she knew she had to try. One night, she heard laughter outside her door. She opened it to find Gerald gone. The pot was on the floor, shattered. The soil was scattered across the hallway. And the little plant, her one piece of home, was nowhere to be found. Mira stood in that empty hallway and felt something inside her go very still, very quiet, very cold, but she did not cry. She did not scream. She simply bent down, cleaned up the soil with her bare hands, and went back into her room. The door closed behind her, and in the darkness, her hands began to shake. 3 months passed. Myra learned to live with the hate. Every morning. She woke up in her small gray room and told herself that today would be better. Every night, she went to sleep knowing that it had not been. But she kept going. She kept attending classes. She kept doing her assignments, even when they were deleted, even when she had to do them 2 or 3 times. She kept eating alone in the dining hall, kept walking through hallways where everyone stepped away from her like she was a disease. The Scythery girl, Vethra, never stopped. She was patient in her cruelty. 1 week, she would leave Myra alone. Let her begin to hope that maybe things were changing. Then she would strike again. Worse than before. Always worse. Myra's communications with Earth were blocked. She did not know how Vethra had done it, but every message she tried to send to her family disappeared into nothing. She had not heard her mother's voice in 2 months. She had not seen her brother's face. She was alone in a way that humans were never meant to be alone. She lost weight. She stopped sleeping well. In class, she would catch herself staring at nothing, her mind far away. The professors noticed. They did nothing. She was just a human, after all. The experiment. If she failed, if she broke, it would simply prove what everyone already believed. Humans did not belong here. Then came the Festival of Unified Light. It was the biggest celebration of the year. Representatives came from every corner of the galaxy to watch the ceremony in the Academy's central atrium. There were lights everywhere, floating globes of color that drifted through the air like living things. Music played, strange and beautiful sounds that Mira had never heard before. Everyone was dressed in their finest clothes, their brightest colors. Mira wore the same simple clothes she always wore. She stood in a corner, alone, and watched the celebration happen around her. She did not belong here. She knew that now. She had tried so hard to fit in, to prove herself, and it had meant nothing. She was still the monster from the Deathworld. She would always be the monster, but she could not leave. If she left, she would be admitting that they were right, that humans were not ready, that all the hopes of her people meant nothing. So she stayed. She watched. She waited for the night to end. Vethra found her near the edge of the atrium. The Scythery girl had been drinking fermented starbloom, a liquid that made her kind, bold, and reckless. Her golden eyes were bright with alcohol and hate. "Look at the human," Vethra announced loudly, standing in the shadows like the creature it is, too ugly to be seen in the light. Several beings turned to look. Some laughed. Most looked away, uncomfortable but unwilling to interfere. Myra said nothing. She had learned that words made things worse. Silence was safer, but silence was not what Vethra wanted. "Your kind should never have been allowed into space," Vethra said, moving closer. Her voice was loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "You breathe like parasites. You destroy everything you touch. Your planet is a graveyard of species that you murdered. And you think you deserve to stand here among civilized beings?" Mira kept her eyes on the floor. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, from something else. Something she had been holding inside for 3 months. "I have seen the records of your world," Vethra continued. She was enjoying this, enjoying the attention, enjoying the way Myra would not look at her. "You killed your own kind for centuries. Wars without end. You poisoned your own air, your own water. You are a species of destruction. The galaxy would be better if your world was sterilized, burned clean." Every human turned to ash. Something cracked inside Myra, a small sound, a tiny break. But she held on. She kept holding on. "Look at me when I speak to you, animal," Vethra hissed. Myra looked up. Her eyes were wet, but her face was stone. "I am not an animal," she said quietly. "And I am not what you think I am." "You are exactly what I think you are," Vethra said. "You are nothing. You are less than nothing. I am going to prove it." She raised her hand and struck Myra across the face. It was not a hard blow by Scythery standards. Vethra had never needed to hit hard. Her bones were delicate. Her muscles were weak. The slap was meant to humiliate, not to hurt. But Myra was not Sci the Rye. Myra was human. She was born on a world where the gravity pulled at your bones every second of every day, where the air was thick with oxygen, a gas that burned in the blood and fed muscles that other species could not imagine. where children learned to run before they could walk because things with teeth were always chasing, where the weak died young and the strong survived by being faster, tougher, and more dangerous than everything else. Vethra's hand hit Myra's cheek and stopped. The human girl barely moved. Her skin barely reddened, but something in her eyes changed. 3 months of silence. 3 months of swallowed anger. 3 months of being patient, being kind, being everything her parents had asked her to be. All of it cracked. All of it shattered. Myra moved to everyone watching. She simply blurred. One moment she was standing still. The next, her hand was around Vethra's wrist. The movement was so fast that most species in the atrium could not track it. Their eyes were too slow. Their brains could not process what they were seeing. Myra's fingers closed. Not hard. Not by human standards. A gentle squeeze. The kind of grip she would use to hold a bird without hurting. But Vethra's bones were hollow, light, fragile, built for a world where nothing was dangerous. They broke like dry twigs. The sound was sharp and clear, cutting through the music, through the laughter, through everything. Crack, crack, crack. 3 bones in Vethra's wrist, shattering under pressure that would not have bruised human skin. Vethra screamed. It was a terrible sound. High and thin, full of pain and shock and something that might have been fear. She had never felt pain like this. Her species did not have a word for this kind of agony. And Mira stood there, Vethra's broken wrist in her hand, and felt the world go very, very quiet. Time seemed to stop in the atrium. Everything froze like a picture in the first second. Myra realized what she had done. She looked at her hand, at the wrist inside it, at the strange angle of the bones beneath the pearl-white skin. This was wrong. This was exactly what she had promised never to do. She had hurt someone. She had proven them all right. In the second, she let go. Vethra fell backward, her legs giving out beneath her, her good hand reaching for her broken wrist. The scream continued, filling the air, bouncing off the crystal walls. Myra stepped back, her hands raised, her palms open. The universal sign of no threat. No danger. I'm not attacking. In the 3rd second, the crowd began to react. Beings stepped away from Myra, moving in waves like water flowing away from a dropped stone. Some ran, some froze. Some made sounds that she did not recognize, alarm calls in languages she had never heard. The fear in the room was thick enough to taste in the 4th second. Myra saw the recording drones. Small floating machines that captured everything for the Academy's records. They had been recording the festival. They had recorded everything. The slap, the grab, the breaking. It was all saved now, stored in machines that would share it across the galaxy in moments. In the 5th second, security forces arrived. They were Karth, the largest species in the Academy, each one standing 3 meters tall with 4 powerful arms and skin like stone. They carried plasma rifles, weapons designed to stop charging beasts on heavy gravity worlds. 12 of them surrounded Mira in a circle, their weapons raised, their eyes locked on her. Mira did not move. She did not run. She stood perfectly still and felt tears running down her cheeks. In the 6th second, the lead security officer shouted something at her. A command. Get down. Hands on your head. Surrender. She could barely hear it over Vethra's screaming, over the ringing in her own ears, over the sound of her heart breaking. In the 7th second, she dropped to her knees. Not because they told her to, because her legs would not hold her anymore. She put her hands on her head and stared at the floor and wondered if they would kill her now. If they would end it here, end the experiment, end the hope of her people. She almost wished they would. In the 8th second, the broadcast went live. Somewhere in the Academy's systems, an automatic process triggered. Major events were always shared with the galactic news networks. This was a major event. A human had attacked the High Arbiter's daughter. The footage spread outward at the speed of light, racing through communication networks, jumping from system to system, world to world. In the 9th second, 1 billion beings saw what happened. They saw Vethra strike first. They saw Myra move, faster than their eyes could follow. They saw the grab, the squeeze, the breaking. They saw a small, young human disable an attacker without even trying. And they saw her now, on her knees, crying. Not fighting, not running, not doing any of the violent things they had been told humans did. Military commanders on 100 worlds paused their work and watched the footage again. And again. They ran it at slow speed, frame by frame, trying to understand what they were seeing. How fast had she moved? How strong was her grip? How was it possible that this small creature could do what she had done? They began to run calculations. If one untrained human girl could do this, what could a trained soldier do? What could an army do? What would happen if humans ever decided to stop being peaceful? The numbers were terrifying. In the 10th second, the atrium fell silent. The screaming stopped. Vethra had passed out from the pain, her body lying in a heap on the floor. The music had stopped. The floating lights had dimmed. The crowd stood frozen, hundreds of beings from dozens of species, all staring at the human girl on her knees. No one spoke. No one moved. No one breathed. The silence spread outward from the academy. It traveled along the broadcast signals, into ships and stations and planets across the galaxy. Beings who had been laughing a moment ago sat in stunned quiet. Beings who had never thought twice about humans suddenly felt a cold fear in their hearts. On Earth, Strategic Command received the broadcast and went to high alert. Ships were readied. Soldiers were woken. Diplomats began preparing statements. They had always known this moment might come. The moment when humanity's strength could no longer be hidden. But they had hoped it would not happen like this. Not with a crying girl on her knees, surrounded by weapons, paying the price for 3 months of abuse that no one had cared about. In the atrium, Myra stayed on her knees. She could feel the weapons pointed at her. She could feel the fear of everyone around her. She could feel the weight of what she had done pressing down on her like the gravity of her home world. She had broken her promise. She had hurt someone. She had proven that humans were dangerous. But somewhere deep inside her, in a place she did not want to look at, another voice whispered something different. She had been struck. She had defended herself. She had used the absolute minimum force needed to stop the attack. And even now, with 12 weapons pointed at her, with every reason to fight or run, she stayed still. She surrendered. She proved that humans were not mindless monsters. She proved that they could choose. The silence continued. The galaxy waited. And Mira Vasquez, 16 years old, alone and afraid, knelt on the floor and wondered what would happen next. The answer would come soon. And it would change everything. The holding cell was small and cold. Mira sat on a metal bench and stared at the wall. Her hands had stopped shaking hours ago. Now she just felt empty, like someone had reached inside her and taken everything out. The door opened. A Korath walked in, ducking to fit through the frame. He was old, his stone-gray skin marked with scars from battles Myra could not imagine. He wore a military uniform covered in medals. When he sat down across from her, the bench groaned under his weight. "I am Commander Dekazal," he said. His voice was deep, like rocks grinding together. "I served with human soldiers in the border conflicts." Myra looked up. She had heard of the border conflicts. Small battles at the edge of human space. The first time humanity had fought alongside other species. The first time the galaxy had seen what humans could do in war. "I watched the recording," Dexal said. I watched it 17 times. Myra said nothing. What was there to say? You held back, the commander said. The words hung in the air. Myra did not understand. I have seen humans fight, Dexal continued. Real fighting. I have seen what your kind does when they are truly threatened. When they are afraid. When they have decided that something must die. He leaned forward, his forearms resting on his knees. You could have killed her. You could have killed everyone in that room before they knew what was happening. Your speed, your strength, your instincts, they are beyond what most species can understand. Myra's throat was tight. I did not want to hurt anyone. I know, Dexal said. That is why I am here. That is why this is not over. The trial lasted 11 days. It was held before the full Galactic Council, 12 of the most powerful beings in known space sitting in judgment of one human girl. The broadcast continued. The galaxy watched. On the first day, they showed the footage of Vethra's attack. The slap, the grab, the breaking. On the second day, the defense presented more footage. 3 months of recordings from the Academy's security systems. Myra's food being knocked away. Her belongings destroyed. Her communications blocked. The messages on her door. The night Gerald was taken, the council watched in silence. On the third day, they brought in witnesses. Other students who had seen what happened. Most of them lied, saying they had seen nothing, remembering nothing. But a few spoke truth. A young Beshan who had watched Vethra torture Mira for weeks. A Karath student who had wanted to help, but was afraid of the Kelmorris family. One by one, they told their stories. On the fourth day, High Arbiter Kelmorris spoke. He demanded death. He demanded that the human experiment be ended forever. He demanded that Earth pay for what had been done to his daughter. On the fifth day, Earth responded. They showed the full, unedited footage. They showed Vethra striking first. They showed Myra trying to walk away, again and again. They showed 3 months of abuse that the Academy had done nothing to stop. Our citizen defended herself, the human ambassador said. She used minimal force. She caused the smallest harm she could while protecting herself. And now you want to execute her for it? The arguments continued for 6 more days. Both sides presented evidence, called witnesses, made speeches. The galaxy watched every moment. And slowly, something began to change. The footage of those 10 seconds played again and again on every world. Analysts broke it down frame by frame. They showed how fast Myra had moved. They calculated the force of her grip. They explained what it meant to be born on a Category 7 Deathworld, but they also showed what happened after. The surrender, the tears, the complete lack of aggression once the threat was over. For the first time, the galaxy began to understand something about humans that they had never considered. Humans were not uncontrollable monsters. They were not savage beasts who attacked without reason. They were something far more complex. They were apex predators who chose to be gentle. They were warriors who chose to be peaceful. They were the most dangerous species in the known galaxy, and they knew it. And they controlled it. That control was more frightening than any amount of raw power. On the 11th day, the council gave its verdict. Mira Vasquez had acted in self-defense. The force she used was proportional to the threat she faced. She was free to go. But that was not all. The Academy and the Kelmorris family had failed in their duty to protect a student in their care. They had allowed systematic abuse. They had ignored obvious harm. They were ordered to pay damages to Earth that would take generations to repay. High Arbiter Kelmorris was removed from the council. His daughter Vethra was expelled from the Academy and banned from holding any position of power for the rest of her life. The message was clear. In the new galaxy, even the powerful could fall. Myra returned to Earth. She spent a year healing. spending time with her family, trying to forget the cold halls of the academy. Her brother gave her a new plant, another succulent, and she named it Gerald II, but she did not stay home forever. 1 year later, she returned to the academy, not as a student, but as something new. The first human ambassador to the Galactic Youth Integration Program. Her job was to help other young humans who would come after her, to make sure they were never alone, to make sure they were never afraid. On her first day back, she found a package waiting in her new office. It was from the Karth Marine Corps. Inside was a small potted plant, a succulent with thick green leaves. The note attached was simple. Deathworlders, stick together. Welcome home. Myra set the plant on her desk, next to Gerald II, and smiled. Outside her window, the stars stretched on forever. A galaxy full of species who had once feared humanity, who still feared them in a way. But now that fear was mixed with something else, respect, because the galaxy had learned what Earth had always known. The measure of a people was not how dangerous they could be. It was how dangerous they could be, and chose not to be. Humans were the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and that was exactly why they were worthy of the stars.